Continuing his South America tour, President Lee Jae-myung has held a summit with Chilean President José Antonio Kast in Santiago, agreeing to upgrade the free trade agreement between the two countries and deepen cooperation on critical minerals. Korea posted its first triple growth in 3 months in June, with industrial output, retail sales, and facility investment all rebounding on the back of strong semiconductor and automobile performance. US President Trump has announced a historic agreement for Hamas's complete disarmament in Gaza, even as a collapsed US-Iran ceasefire saw both sides trade fresh missile strikes, deepening fears of a wider Middle East war. Hello and thanks for joining us on Arirang News. President Lee Jae-myung and his Chilean counterpart José Antonio Kast have held a summit in Santiago. They agreed to resume a joint committee for the first time in 10 years to discuss upgrading the Korea-Chile Free Trade Agreement. Our Blue House correspondent Yoon Jung-min reports.
The summit began with an official welcome at the presidential palace in Santiago for the South Korean first couple. President Lee was the first Korean president to visit Chile in 11 years. Upgrading the bilateral free trade agreement was a focal point of Thursday's summit between President Lee Jae-myung and his Chilean counterpart, José Antonio Kast. Chile was the first country to sign an FTA with South Korea in 2004, and the deal hasn't been updated since then.
양국은 한칠레 FTA 자유무역위원회를 10년 만에 재가동하여 통상 투자 현안을 점검하고 고해적인 한칠레 FTA 개선 등을 포함한 양국의 통상관계 증진 방안에 대해서 협의해 나가기로 하였습니다.
We agreed to resume the Korea-Chile Free Trade Commission, last held 10 years ago, to seek a roadmap to modernize and upgrade bilateral ties to a higher level.
They also held in-depth discussions over major economic frameworks, including the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership and the Pacific Alliance. The leaders also agreed to promote partnership in critical mineral supply chains, for which an MOU was signed for cooperation on mineral resources.
세계 1위 구리 생산국이자 1위 리튬 매장국인 주요 자원 부국 칠레와 반도체, 배터리 등 첨단 산업 선도국인 우리 한국은 핵심 광물 공급망 구축에 있어서 자연스럽고 이상적인 파트너임이 분명합니다.
On infrastructure, Lee and Kast also agreed to further cooperate on the Chacao Bridge building project, Chile's flagship national project, in which a South Korean builder is taking part. MOUs were signed for cooperation on Antarctic research and maritime safety.
Chile aims to make inroads into the South Pole. I once again invite President Lee to visit the South Pole, together with me. As for cooperation on icebreakers, I hope to contribute more for greater technological advancement.
Cooperation on science and technology, people-to-people exchanges, and K-culture will be further promoted. He asked his Chilean counterpart for unwavering support for resolving North Korea's nuclear issues, and Kast agreed to work together for peace and stability on the Korean peninsula. On Friday, President Lee will hold a summit with Argentine President Javier Milei over in Buenos Aires, the final leg of his three-nation trip to South America. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News, Santiago.
Korea's stock market opened higher on Friday after overnight gains in US semiconductor shares spilled over into Korean stocks. The benchmark KOSPI opened 1.15% higher, then quickly surged more than 13%, climbing back above the 6,000 mark shortly after the open. The rally prompted buy-side sidecars on both the KOSPI and KOSDAQ, halting trading for 5 minutes. Market heavyweights Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix each opened more than 20% higher in early trading. Korea's economy showed signs of recovery in June as production, consumption and investment all grew, with industrial output posting its biggest monthly gain in 6 years, on a sharp rebound in automobile and semiconductor production. Our Park Jun-an has the details.
The Korean economy delivered a broadly positive set of triple growth numbers in June, with production, consumption and investment all rising for the first time in 3 months. According to data released by the Ministry of Data and Statistics on Friday, overall industrial production jumped 2.3% from the previous month. This marks the sharpest monthly increase in 6 years, rebounding from May's fall of 0.3% due to a base effect in semiconductor production. June's growth was largely driven by a 4.5% rebound in semiconductor output and a massive 15.4% jump in automobile production. The ministry explained that the auto sector benefited from the normalization of parts supply and strong demand driven by the launch of new models of car. Retail sales, a key indicator of private consumption, also climbed 2.7%. This was backed by robust automobile purchases and special promotional events by major tech companies like Samsung Electronics and LG Electronics, which boosted demand for home appliances and computers.
June's industrial activity saw a 6.4% increase in production from the previous month, driven largely by a 15.4% jump in automobile output as parts supply normalized. This not only boosted production, but also lifted retail sales of passenger vehicles and increased facility investment in the auto sector.
Facility investment also grew 5.8% compared to the previous month. The increase was largely due to heavy investments in machinery for semiconductor manufacturing and transportation equipment. With all three major sectors showing a steady rebound, the positive momentum could revitalize broader domestic industries moving forward. However, if external uncertainties continue to persist and escalate further, the positive output seen in June could lose momentum and negatively affect the second half of the year. 박준환, Arirang News.
U.S. President Donald Trump has stated that an agreement has been reached with Hamas for their complete disarmament. However, fresh military exchanges between the United States and Iran raise fears that the Middle East could once again be on the brink of a wider war. An Sung-jin has the details.
U.S. President Donald Trump says Hamas has agreed to fully disarm, describing the move as a historic breakthrough toward lasting peace in Gaza. In a post on Truth Social, Trump announced that the Peace Commission, an organization he established to oversee Gaza's reconstruction, had reached an agreement with Hamas and other groups in the enclave for the complete disarmament. Trump called the deal a monumental step, saying it would pave the way for Gaza to be governed by a new Palestinian administration working alongside the Peace Commission to rebuild the territory. Hamas has not confirmed the agreement or responded publicly to Trump's announcement. Meanwhile, the fragile pause in fighting between the United States and Iran has come to an abrupt end, with both sides continuing military strikes. Both each fired barrages of missiles on Thursday, with the U.S. military saying it launched attacks against military command centers and missile facilities. This comes as the U.S. Central Command stated on Wednesday local time that it resumed airstrikes across Iran near the Strait of Hormuz, just 5 days after President Donald Trump ordered a halt to military operations for behind-the-scenes talks. The U.S. president had previously expressed optimism about negotiations, but expressed disappointment following the reported attacks on American forces and declared, "Now it's our turn." These renewed attacks came after Iran allegedly attacked a U.S. military base in Jordan. On Wednesday, Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps said it attacked U.S. bases in Jordan and Kuwait and destroyed several fighter jets. However, the U.S. military said no American aircraft were damaged and that all Iranian missiles and drones were intercepted or failed to reach their targets. The conflict is now spreading beyond the Persian Gulf and Red Sea, with 2 vessels struck by drones near Egypt, and Saudi Arabia already joining its first joint military operation with U.S. forces in the Red Sea. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy says that Russia used a North Korean missile for an overnight strike, the first time such a weapon has been fired in the war in nearly a year. That's according to Reuters and AFP on Thursday local time. Zelenskyy said further investigation is needed to confirm, but added that there is a strong possibility the missile was of North Korean origin. He strongly condemned both Pyongyang and Moscow for the suspected attack. This stems from an overnight missile and drone attack from Russia that caused dozens of casualties, killing at least 9 people, including 2 children. The Trump administration is considering a $100,000 fee for foreign students seeking to work in the United States after graduating from American universities. According to the Wall Street Journal, the fee would apply to the Optional Practical Training or OPT program, which lets international graduates work in the US for up to 3 years on student visas. About 419,000 foreign graduates were working under the OPT program in 2024. The proposal follows President Trump's push last year for a $100,000 annual fee for H-1B non-immigrant visa applications, though a US appeals court blocked the policy last week. Prime Minister Han Sung-suk has ordered government agencies to remain on high alert, warning that scorching temperatures in Korea could intensify further next week. Speaking at a government meeting on heatwave and drought preparedness on Friday, Han urged ministries to do everything possible to minimize the impact of the prolonged heat. She called for enhanced protection of vulnerable groups, better access to cooling shelters for outdoor and delivery workers, and close monitoring of water supplies in drought-prone areas. The Prime Minister also urged the public to avoid outdoor activities during the hottest part of the day. And Korea's record-breaking heatwave is showing no signs of easing, with temperatures soaring above 40 degrees Celsius in parts of the country for a second straight day. Health authorities are urging extra caution as heat-related deaths continue to rise, and forecasters warn the extreme heat will persist into August. Lee Seung-jae reports.
The intense summer heat is expected to continue through the final day of July, with dangerously high temperatures and tropical nights gripping most of South Korea. Record-breaking heat continued across the country's southeast on Thursday. In Yangsan, the mercury reached 40.3 degrees Celsius for the second straight day, marking the first time since 2018 that a location in South Korea recorded temperatures above 40 degrees on consecutive days. It was also the highest temperature ever recorded there since weather observations began. Nearby cities also saw historic heat. Kimhae climbed to 39 degrees Celsius, its hottest July day on record, while Busan followed Wednesday's all-time high of 38.8 degrees with another blistering 38.3 degrees, making it the city's second hottest day ever. Changwon and Ulsan also recorded some of their highest temperatures since modern weather records began. The Korea Meteorological Administration says Friday will remain extremely hot, with daytime highs ranging from 32 to 37 degrees Celsius. Most of the country is expected to endure another day of intense heat and tropical nights, with mostly sunny skies in the south and on Jeju Island. Health officials are urging people to take extra precautions as the prolonged heat wave continues. Since mid-May, more than 1,600 people have been treated for heat-related illnesses, with 12 deaths. Although the total number of people affected is lower than during the same period last year, the death toll is already close to last year's figure, indicating that this summer's heat has led to more severe cases. Forecasters warn the dangerous conditions are likely to persist, with little relief expected in the coming days. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
A new tour is transforming one of Seoul's iconic cultural landmarks into an immersive K-culture experience. Shin So-eun went to check it out. Imagine standing at the center of a grand stage as the lights sparkle and everyone's attention is fixed on you. For most people, a trip to the theater begins when the curtain rises. But here, visitors have a first-hand experience behind the scenes of the spectacle. Highlighting its theatrical legacy, the Sejong Center for the Performing Arts, located in Gwanghwamun Square in the heart of Seoul, invites foreigners to a backstage tour that brings Korea's culture together in one immersive event.
I see performances as one of the most powerful forms of experiential content. As artists at work behind the scenes during the day, I wanted to reveal the mechanisms behind the scenes through this tour.
Considered Korea's largest performing arts venue, the auditorium can accommodate more than 3,000 people. The magnificent sounds are all produced from one side of the auditorium, which drew inspiration from a Korean traditional string instrument called komungo.
I'm the type of person I want to learn something very deeply and very thoroughly. My impression after leaving here is that it's interesting how there's been some Western influence, but still faithfulness to Korean tradition.
Echoing the curved eaves of mainstream Korean architecture and orchestra, the Sejong Center hosts global art forms such as opera and ballet. Spaces normally hidden from the audience farther deepen visitors' curiosity.
Seeing the backstage areas and costumes up close was incredible. The theater was so beautiful that I'd love to come back for a performance.
Foreign visitors are drawn to the beauty of restraint in Korean dance.
In Korean dance, the fan can become a brush, a prop, or even a way to express the movement of air. I hope these details resonate with visitors and evoke a wide range of cultural emotions.
By stepping behind the curtain, audiences can get a glimpse of how Korean performances come to life. With foreign arrivals surpassing 10 million in the first half of the year, tour like this can turn theaters into a new K-culture destinations. 신소은, Arirang News.
This is the world now. European soccer's governing body has voted to boycott all World Cup tournaments if FIFA pushes forward with its plan to sell stakes to private investors. UEFA's 55 member nations voted unanimously on Thursday to boycott the 2027 Women's World Cup in Brazil and the 2030 Men's World Cup. The move aims to stop FIFA President Gianni Infantino's $20 billion FIFA subsidiary plan, which would hand 20% ownership to external investors, including Joshua Kushner's Thrive Capital. North America's governing body, CONCACAF, and its 41 member nations also rejected the plan on Thursday. The U.S. economy grew at a 1.5% annual rate from April through June, down from 2.1% in the first quarter and short of what forecasters expected. The drag came from the artificial intelligence boom as chips and data center equipment are largely built overseas, and imports count against the growth calculation. Trade alone subtracted a full percentage point. Household spending accelerated to a 3.2% pace, and business investment was robust. Inflation cooled in June to 3.7%, a decline from 4.1% in May. In Pakistan, a coal mine explosion has killed at least 11 miners. A methane gas explosion tore through the coal complex in Balochistan province on Thursday. 36 men were inside the section that collapsed. 25 of them are still unaccounted for. Rescue teams are digging more than a kilometer below the surface. The province's chief mines inspector says crews are still hoping to find survivors, but said, quote, chances are low. In Prague, zookeepers dumped tons of ice into the polar bear enclosure on Thursday amid the sweltering heat. The zoo started handing out ice 2 years ago as the number of extremely hot days piled up. Staff had planned this year's deliveries for July and August, but the first heat wave arrived early, and in June, the Czech Republic recorded its hottest day ever, close to 42 degrees Celsius on June 28th. Chu Ji-hyun, Arirang News.
Today's hottest weather will once again target the southern region. Heat wave alerts remain in place with some parts of Gyeongsang-do provinces under heat wave emergency warnings. And we're talking about exceptional temperatures. Yangsan has already topped 40 degrees Celsius for 2 consecutive days, something never observed in July in more than a century of weather records. And these conditions mean even healthy people can suffer heat-related illnesses, so avoid outdoor activities during the hottest hours. Stay hydrated and don't forget to check on elderly family members. And this afternoon, Seoul will be getting up to 34 degrees Celsius. Gyeongju at 38 degrees. Busan will be topping out at 39 degrees under sunny skies. The extreme heat is not easing anytime soon. Easterly winds will make Western Korea even hotter next week. And as we are in the hottest stretch of the summer, please continue to take extra care in the heat.
That's all we have for today's noon edition of Arirang News. Thank you for watching. Arirang News will be back at 5 p.m. Korea time, so stay tuned.